Hello and welcome to the show. Now, the Lucky Dip challenges we've done on Forza 7 are an awful lot of fun to film. However, we've had a lot of problems with getting replays to work. Truth is, of the 6, 7 that we filmed, only one replay has worked. After much faffing around, we thought that this particular race replay was long since dead, found a version that does work, so we have got an A-class Lucky Dip race for you today. A big thank you to the person in the last video, I can't remember who it was, I apologise, who linked me to a much easier spreadsheet to use to randomly draw vehicles from based on their completely stock PI, because it makes it a hell of a lot easier than the other system that I was using previous. So yeah, everybody in this lobby was randomly drawn an A-class vehicle, and said cars were set out on the grid in reverse PI order, so theoretically the slowest cars will start at the front with a 1-second roll-off delay between the vehicles. Now, while between first and second that isn't a huge amount, between first and last on the grid that does equate to some 20 plus seconds, and while the car in last will supposedly be the fastest, there is a lot of traffic to try and get through. For this race, we were heading to the Silverstone circuit, the full layout of Silverstone, riding on board with a Porsche, started around the 5th, 6th position already, on the back of the Charger Hellcat, looking for a way past, trying to go around the outside. The Porsche has the grip to get that pass potentially done, and will draw alongside. It's a tough place to go, too wide, stuck on the outside. Porsche does get ahead, but then comes the power of that dodge. The Hellcat is, as you would imagine, pretty bloody fast in a straight line. A little bit of lag going on here as well won't help matters. The Challenger Hellcat was very sideways. The Challenger even harder to drive than the Charger, and going rather exploring in a huge plume of tyre smoke. The Charger's quite sideways, the Challenger's very sideways. This all helped the Porsche, who had got past and was able to run, well, I'll say relatively clean air. The Challenger was, yeah, not having a particularly fast time. It did not like the car. It was going very sideways and was about to be mugged by, well, just about everything. It's a quite uncooperative car, and around here, this sort of track wouldn't be suiting the Challenger. It didn't suit the Shelby GT500 either. The Camaro, more of a handling vehicle. While it wasn't the most up-to-date ZL1, it's a 2012 ZL1, still better through the corners than the vehicles that it is racing against here, and let's not forget, still mighty fast in a straight line. I absolutely adored the 360 Challenge and was very jealous when, well, somebody else got it. It is a mighty good A-class car. I was driving the Lamborghini Diablo that we see in the background, managing to brake a little bit late and going for a bit of an explore on this opening lap. The Ferrari manages to pry open the door 3 wide and make the pass stick. This was still all on the opening lap. That perhaps one of the best overtakes we would see at this, certainly in this part of the race. The poor Aston Martin stuck trying to go around the outside of the Porsche. Might have been able to do it on his own, but 3 wide, you're always likely to run out of grip, run out of road on that real outside line. The Ferrari was a contender. We were expecting the 360 Challenge to be a tough car to deal with, a tough car to beat. Of the higher starting PI vehicles, of course, these guys had a bigger disadvantage in terms of time, but you would expect the cars to be mighty quick. The Mercedes SLS AMG was amongst them. The Bentley Concept Speed 6 car was also there. The Porsche 959, highest starting PI car, really struggles though. Often wobbly and wonky car to drive. The Mercedes trying to go around the outside of the Bentley. It is another vehicle that spent a lot of its time going quite sideways, but it would make up the position there. Now, we were expecting, of course, these cars to catch onto the field and make their way through relatively easily, although it took them a while, because a lot of these higher PI cars weren't great cars to drive. The Mercedes very sideways, the Bentley not particularly fast, and the Porsche quite wobbly. So yeah, it took them a lot longer. Back towards the front of the field, the opening lap was led by the Audi RS7 that had started on pole, although he would be caught and passed by the Cadillac ATS-V. That would then come under increasing pressure from the Porsche, with the Audi apparently being one of the worst cars to drive imaginable. Said Porsche, though, was having difficulties against the Cadillac. You see, around the corners, as you would expect, the Porsche is the quicker of the two cars. The thing is, the Cadillac is very fast in a straight line, was fast accelerating out of the corners. and it really wasn't that much slower around the turns. It wasn't that much slower that the Porsche could simply drive around the outside of it easily or throw the car up the inside in a braking zone. And that made life very tough for the Porsche in terms of finding a way past. And at this stage of the race, while, yeah, these guys are first and second, this is costing the Porsche a fair bit of time because he can't get a pass quite done on the Cadillac. He's being held up, he's being slowed down, isn't able to run at his ultimate pace, and isn't able to make a move on the Cadillac. And the Cadillac isn't losing too much time on his own because he's not having to massively defend because he's always so far gone by the time it gets to the braking zones. I would be in a race-long battle with the Aston Martin Vanquish. Having gone exploring on lap 1, I would recover and find a way past said Vanquish. We would then go past the Challenger that had pretty much given up and decided it was going to be going sideways everywhere anyway, so might as well enjoy going sideways. Having passed the Vanquish, I then have a good run on the Panamera, getting the inside at the old first corner, although we both end up on slightly wonky lines. That would give the Aston Martin the opportunity to try and take two cars in one corner. Would get the move done on the Porsche, although as we head into Maggots and Beckett's, hadn't got the move done on the Lamborghini, so we proceeded to go too wide all the way through Maggots and Beckett's. Not an advisory situation, shall we say, to be going too wide through here. In all of the kerfuffle, the Porsche managed to draw alongside my Lamborghini, but wouldn't have the straight line speed of the big Lambo. It was pretty bloody fast in terms of that straight line speed. One of, not the fastest car here, but certainly one of the faster cars down the straights, and my opportunity would come up the inside at the end of the straight, and I could outbrake the Aston. However, the rain had started to fall, and it was only likely to get heavier, which was perhaps not good news for my Lamborghini. It was good news for some other cars, though, in the field. Somebody had been drawn a Subaru Impreza rally car. Now, this was always going to be murdered when it came to the straights. It is considerably underpowered in comparison to the vehicles around it, but when it comes to the corners, well, it's a full-on race car. It is very good, and let's not forget it is all-wheel drive, and that is going to help it when the going starts to get a bit wet. Before the rain fell, it was busy fighting its way with a Cayman GT4. The Porsche, good through the turns, but not as good as the Subaru. Quick down the straights. The Challenger continues to wiggle its way around ahead. The Cayman surprisingly fast in terms of straight line speed. But yeah, as the rain started to fall, we were concerned. It was likely that the Subaru would start to come into its element more. Now, will have lost time, perhaps, to some of its competitors in the opening stage of the race, but yeah, this is where it can come strong. And it hadn't been marred down in too much of real crazy battles. The Challenger was going to have an even worse time now the going started to get wet. The Ferrari California T out a little bit wide. That put the Cayman up a position around the final corner. And as soon as we got into this tight, twisty section, you could see how much the Subaru has closed in. The Porsche got himself a little bit caught on a curve, a bit out of shape. The Cayman is going to continue to fight with the Ferrari too wide through that first corner. The Subaru would get the best run of the lot of them. It's a long way around the outside of turn 2 against that Ferrari, but he has the grip to make it work, fires the car up the inside, and that would be another position for the Impreza. Further up towards the front in the pack would continue to bunch up, while the Porsche and Cadillac would enjoy a relatively quiet time. This group would close up significantly, and the problem was for cars like this Aston Martin, for cars to an extent like the 360 Challenge, they were a lot quicker than the vehicles ahead of them, but the vehicles ahead are busy fighting. They have their own struggles to deal with it. It just slows everybody down. There's just this sea of metal to try and get past. The 360 Challenge spots an opportunity to get a bunch of cars in one corner. It's 3 wide again here at Silverstone. The Ferrari on the inside. The Shelby gets a huge slide. The Audi runs out of road, has to do a little bit of the Raikkonen line exploring out wide there. They get away with all of that. The Ferrari not able, doesn't quite have the straight line speed of the Aston Martin, but does still get a couple of cars in the process. And with the rain falling, braking zones were rapidly changing. The Aston Martin goes for an explore out very wide and loses 2 or 3 positions in all of that. The BMW i8 making up some ground. I mean, this was good news for the 360 Challenge, being one of the best handling cars here. Was able to make the most of its handling and move up positions without losing too much time. That was really the critical point, really the critical thing you needed to do. Not lose time fighting slower cars, not getting stuck in traffic. The Aston Martin would get the place back from the BMW i8, so they had a little bit of a bump going through the next corner. Yeah, if you lost time, got stuck in battles and so on, it was very easy to lose a lot of ground to the cars ahead. The Cadillac was continuing to lead, and it might possibly have stood a chance to fend off the Porsche had the rain not started come pouring down. In these conditions, while the Cadillac was still going to be the faster car in terms of straight line speed, it just was not quite good enough through the corners. In the end, he pushed it a little bit too hard, asked too much of the brakes, and couldn't quite get the big four-door saloon car slowed down as the Porsche would go flying past. Their bigger concern, though, was the Camaro that was catching pretty damn fast. As with the Cadillac off the track, the Camaro would be up into second place. Had a little bit of a sniff up the inside into that final chicane, but couldn't quite do anything. Wasn't really quite close enough, and the Camaro gets a great drive off of that turn to go try hunting down the Porsche, even with a little bit of exploring around that final corner. Now, one of the big movers in this race so far had been the Lotus 211. Unlike a lot of the other cars, a lot of the other high-starting PI cars, this was making quick progress through the field, as you might expect. Whether it was raining, whether it was dry, of course, this would outhandle just about everything. It wasn't particularly fast in a straight line, but that doesn't matter, because it will just drive past everything in the corners. Jaguar can't quite carry speed through turn one. The Chargers off exploring as well. 360 Challenge still stuck in this group, still stuck up behind the Shelby GT500, although said Shelby would run out of grip in the end at turn 3, making life easier for the Ferrari, as the Lotus has got past 3 or 4 cars in a matter of the opening stage of this lap. Can't quite go around the outside of the Aston Martin, and certainly has to be patient at times, because the cars he's racing are always going to pull away from it when it comes to the straights. The Lotus gets a good run, but it's not going to be able to do too much about it. Got to stay close enough that when it comes to the braking zones, the Lotus can have a big dive, although the Aston Martin will close him down there, and the 211 not quite able to make that move stick. Up ahead, it is the 360 Challenge vying for a place on the podium around the outside of the Cadillac. As I said before, it's a long way around the outside, but the 360 Challenge has the grip to do it. Likewise, the Lotus has the grip to try it, as they're both going for that spectacular pass. You can see in the background the huge group of cars fighting for position, and this again is costing the Lotus time. If he wants to go chasing after the Porsche, wants to go chasing after the Camaro and so on further up, he needs to clear the Aston Martin as quick as possible, which is one of the, as I said, real critical things with these lucky dip races, and he still can't quite get the move done. In the end, it's bravery into Maggis and Becky's. I don't think the Aston quite expected the Lotus to still be alongside, and the Lotus able to carry that bit more speed through this section will finally get the pass done, but it's been half a lap that it took him to get past said vehicle, and that's a fair amount of time lost. This was that angry pack of cars further back. We kind of half expected the all-wheel drive cars to start to shine a little bit more, that the rain was fooling, although the all-wheel drive cars that we had, like the Panamera for example, weren't really able to exploit the conditions as much as we expected. Outside of the Subaru, I mean, the all-wheel drive cars we had, like Panamera, big, heavy, four-door saloon cars, and while yes, the traction was nice, they were still not going to be as quick through the corners as some of the other vehicles, like the Cayman, for example. Here, the Vanquish was stuck up behind the Charger. The Charger's, of course, straight-line speed and brute power made it quite a difficult car to get past in places. The Panamera trying to sneak past on the inside. The Cayman still in this little group, having a look around, but not really able to do too much at this particular point. As I say that, it's on the outside of turn one. Got to be really mindful of those curbs, though, especially in the wet. It's a few millimetres to spare. The Aston Martins cleared the Shelby. Unfortunately for me, in the Lamborghini, I'd got exploring, as did the Charger, as did the Shelby at that particular turn. I'm trying to frantically get my car back on track. The Panamera, unfortunately, I'm not sure if it's a slightly laggy Porsche, got him bumped out a little bit wide, but all it takes is a wheel on the grass, and with a group this crowded, that's going to cost you 4 or 5 positions. He comes back on alongside a California T with a bit of a bounce across the curb, would keep his car there as they now head down that back straight, but one little bump at an inopportune moment, one even mistake from you, will cost you a heap of positions. I found that out with the Diablo. As I said, the real high PI cars in this particular race, that just the way that they had been drawn, were struggling, with the exception of the Lotus 211. All of them were in trouble. The Porsche 959 didn't really have a huge amount of speed, neither did the Bentley. I think the Mercedes ended up disconnecting, so I don't know how far the SLS would have made it through, but yeah, these guys were just not able to make the most. The 959 is notoriously bad to drive on Forza games, and it's a top A-class car. It's 700 PI, so right at the very top, and it's just not able to make the sort of lap speed that some of the other cars have such a huge disadvantage with that delay to overcome. The cars battling it out at the front were relatively low PI vehicles. The Porsche leading the way, but being caught by the Camaro as they round what was the old first corner. Porsche ran across the curb on the outside, and with that rear-engine Porsche handling just bobbling the car about ever so slightly, the Camaro able to power its way past as we head through Maggotts and Beckett's. And let's not forget how good handling the ZL1 Camaros are. As I said, this isn't the modern ZL1, and even with the big slide out of Maggotts and Beckett's, it's still a good handling car, can still carry a lot of corner speed, and then has the power to propel it down the straight. By no means the fastest car here, but he had made his way to the front without being in any huge battles, while cars, much faster cars, like the Lotus 211 for example, had been stuck. They'd had laps, half laps, where they were stuck in traffic and just not able to make the progress quite needed. Of course, it was flying in these wet conditions. A nice cutback on the Cadillac around the final couple of corners would put the Lotus up into a 4th place, and he would go hunting down the vehicles up ahead because, yeah, lap time wise, the 211 was the quickest car here, but he had a lot of work to be doing. Again, though, with the high PI cars, he was the only one that was really able to break out of the crazy group. This crazy group that I was very much a part of with the Diablo. Having thought I'd got to the front of it, the mistake from me at turn 3 had dropped me right back into the fray, and I was once more sparring with the Aston Martin Vanquish. The Shelby was up the inside, I ran out of grip on the outside, and that's not where you want to be for the 3rd time today. I went exploring the track. Likewise, the Aston Martin went off because now the conditions were getting really, really very soggy, and I had a crazy rear-wheel drive Lamborghini. In rejoining the circuit, I'd been plummeted all the way down to the mid-pack, and this is what I was talking about. You get stuck in a group like this, you can have a very, very fast car, but trying to get overtakes done is so difficult. The California T, for example, a good vehicle, but just couldn't make progress because everyone is fighting 2 and 3 wide up ahead. There's nowhere to go. I'm on the inside of the California. Ferrari's got nowhere to go, gets boxed in behind the Panamera. A couple of cars out wide further back. The Charger does get back onto the circuit. I'm going to gain a position on him. I'm not actually sure what I managed to get knocked by. Oh, it was a BMW, the i8. I had a huge run on. Yeah, the i8 got back ahead of me briefly. I mean, I worked my way back through that pack without losing too much time, but from a simple, silly mistake from me, you can see where the Vanquish is and where I ended up with the Diablo. You really can't afford to make those mistakes. The final lap for the Camaro, relatively uneventful. Having managed to get ahead of the Porsche, pulled a decent sized gap. The 211 would work his way up into 2nd place. Given another lap, the Lotus would probably have caught the Camaro. However, the Chevrolet, able to pull a big enough gap early on, stayed out of the huge, huge battles, and could, run in clean air, run at his kind of maximum pace, if you like, for as long as possible, whereas the 211 got stuck in traffic. When it was finally freed from traffic, caught quickly. You know, would pass the 360, pass the Porsche, absolutely no problems, but had too much work to do. So a brilliant win for the Camaro, 2nd going to the Lotus, 3rd to the Porsche, just fending off the 360 challenge. A great drive for 4th place as well from the Cadillac. Certainly a sort of car that you would expect to struggle. We didn't really expect to see the Cadillac so high up, but again, stayed out of trouble, stayed able to run at his maximum pace with the car, didn't make any silly mistakes, didn't go exploring off the circuit, and by doing that, would stay far enough away. And we were having big fights further back. So 4th for the Cadillac, 5th would go to the Shelby GT500. It didn't look like he would hold on to 5th for a lot of the race, but having had a couple of little offs when it started to get wet, this fight further back would slow all of us down to the point where we couldn't catch the Shelby. Now, this was a great fun fight to be a part of. As we came on to our final lap, it was a lot calmer for the cars at the front. We were still fighting for whatever position we could. It was two Aston Martins, the Vantage and the Vanquish, a Subaru Impreza rally car, and my Lamborghini Diablo, having recovered from its various explorations. The Panamera Turbo was just about in the background of this group. It was my turn to try that outside line, and I would be able to get the pass done. In these conditions, these big, heavy rear-wheel drive supercars were somewhat of a handful, and mistakes were quite easily made, but that time around things worked out for the Diablo. Now, I had the straight line speed advantage here over these cars as I go flying up towards the back of the Subaru. I draw alongside into Maggers and Beckett's, think better of trying that one. I'd already gone side by side all the way with the Aston Martin once. I didn't have the grip to really fight it with the Subaru. The Aston Martin then decided you want to try go around the outside. It wasn't quite going to be a place that things were going to work out. You can see the Lamborghini wiggling its way across the road. The Impreza could carry good speed there through the corners, but had no answer for the Lamborghini when it came to the straights. I could fly my way past. The Vanquish was having a look as well at the Subaru. That helped me out no end, as the Subaru has to fight with the Aston Martin through this next corner. You know, where the Subaru is going to be strong, he's occupied, which could help consolidate my position. The Aston Martin ahead actually ran quite wide into that particular corner, but I wasn't close enough. Too many silly little mistakes from me in the Diablo and stuck in an awful lot of traffic. I mean, I started around the midfield with this car, but just permanently stuck in traffic. Good fun battles, though, with the Aston Martin, with the Subaru, and so you can see how close the Impreza's got around those final couple of corners. That all-wheel drive traction helping it no end out of the tight technical sections. Another lap, I might have got the Aston Martin, might have got the Shelby, or might have fallen off the road. The Subaru may well have got back. Either way, spectacular race for us further back, and even for the lower positions, this was outside the top 10. The 959 did finally catch up to some of these back marker cars, these more struggling cars, some of the lower PI cars that did fall further down the order. The Jaguar struggled in terms of pace. The Audi RS7 was apparently god-awful. That really did struggle for pace. We thought it might get quicker when the rain fell, but even then it was a real handful. Everyone had real issues getting stopped into this final chicane. The Charger was off. The Porsche, unfortunately, was off. The BMW ran wide. The Audi, the only car that really made the brakes work through there, as the Charger and BMW go 3 wide through the corner. BMW end up force out wide there across the curve. The Jaguar can't do anything, and as I said, Jaguar struggling a little bit for pace in all of that. Gets beaten by the RS7. It was a frantic final lap for a lot of cars involved in that, but it went the way that we wanted Lucky Dip race to go, with cars trying to work their way through the field, big groups of cars fighting for position. Yeah, a few cars escaped at the front, although they were being hunted rather relentlessly by that incredible Lotus 211. But yeah, a great drive from the Camaro to take victory in all of that. I do love these sort of racing. It's a shame the replays like to break so often with them, because we've done a lot of these and there have been some really bloody good races. This, well, certainly was one of them. There's been a lot of other ones that have been incredible. Sadly, we've had broken replays for. So yeah, Lucky Dip Racing is as excellent fun as it always has been. Throw in the addition of rain and some quite scary supercars, and things go on the rather interesting side. That, though, is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.